send their children to the boarding house are failures or they are not taking up responsibility. I think it would be unfair to parents. People have different reasons. For me, I know how to play, bond, do everything with my children. But when it comes to teaching them, that's me that has been a classroom teacher before. When it comes to teaching them, I get very emotional and I don't give them the patience to really come out and do their work. So I knew that I could not handle their homework and classwork and projects. So the best way so that they do not suffer academically is for me to send them to a boarding house. When they come home, that love, care that me, I know how to give. I cannot do everything. I will give them that. So for me, it's just 50-50.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there are pros and cons to being a day student and also being a boarding house. And I went to boarding school. Unlike you, I cried my first few days at boarding school. I was not excited to be independent. I mean, it was university, I felt that way, but I was afraid to leave my mother's protection. And luckily, I think there was a senior who was supposed to sort of take care of me, although she was a day student. So maybe I had it was a little easier for me to ease into it, but it wasn't the same for everyone. And that first few weeks, you're trying to get how to fetch water, wash your uniform, and things like that. But the fact, all the things you mentioned, the bullying, the, would I say sexual curiosity, so those are the things that happen. And I would say this again, there is a lack of communication or a problem with communication between those who are, the adults who are meant to take care of you in the boarding house and the students themselves. They seem to be so on, during my time, what you had a conversation about. So you have someone who would go through issues. I remember a particular girl who, a teacher got into trouble because it seemed like he was writing her quite like intimate notes and it got him fired. But it happened for so long until her parents found out. You know, no other teacher was able see that. See it. So that's what scares me. I'm not there. The adult that's supposed to be there is not paying attention. That's what scares me about boarding house.
You know,
and also,
let
me just add one more. I think when you want to send your child to boarding house, you need to pay attention to the sort of child that you have.
Yes.
I said this yesterday, like with my son, I do not think going to boarding house straight up is the best for him because of his personality. I would rather do maybe day school for the first 2 years. He matures a bit. Yes, he's mature a bit. But you see, my daughter, I think she can handle it.
You see, I mean, it's interesting how these were a product of these experiences. Because I remember I almost grew up like an only child because all my brothers had left the country before when I was like 2 years old. So I grew up alone in my own house, new juniors. And so that we are all the products of what I experienced. Because even my husband told me that somebody beat him up really, really bad. And his dad said, his dad came to school and just told the child that beat him up.
Hey.
This is keep quiet. Say he goes home, he beat see the tiny boy that beat you. Are you as big as you are? And that was what started his own aggression. That almost led him for a long time where he was always angry. You know, beating his colleagues, always ready for a fight. Yeah. So these are things, but you see, so just like I said, it's not bad, it's not good. Just how we do it. Now the question therefore is, how do we make boarding houses more effective and productive for children? Because they are good, good benefits, and they're also negative.
Yes.
Also.
So my best year, I went to a boarding school that had the freedom of choice for the kids. She, I think about Dilaja, she used to talk about some people being day students and boarding students choosing to go home. So you can have, you're a boarding student, but you can have a week where you notify school, your parents notify school, they come pick you. Yeah. You can leave school. So that kind of arrangement, if it was possible in any of the schools today, I would consider boarding for my daughter, but not my son. Not because of I know his nature yet, but because I felt even under a monitored school, he's been abused in the past by his teacher. And it's not something I'm willing to risk ever. But my daughter, she's my daughter. She's me. So if you want to try it,
come now.
She's ready for you.
So, but for him, I would not want to risk it again. But if schools would have that freedom, because even this day school they go now, there's a time belt when you must come to school, and I don't ever support that. I want to be able to drive into school when I have the intuition You know this thing.
You can't do that.
We actually talked about this yesterday.
I disagree.
No, Mariah, wait.
When you have a dream.
No,
Yes, you have a dream,
No,
you have a feeling.
Forever.
If you have a dream,
Let me explain
pray for your child.
Let me explain this my son's son. I just had the feeling something wasn't right with my son. So for the entire 3 weeks, I noticed that thing. I would leave work here and go straight home. I would, once he comes back, I'll take off his clothes. I would look at him very well. For finger scratch, for all of that, and I found them. I would question the school, and they'll be like, no, until they play the cameras. So if you are a mother...
And what did you see when they played the camera?
Even they could not even use their mouth to narrate to me.
Okay,
You know,
let's
they
go on a
just,
break.
dealt
Let's
with
go.
this.
See, listen, you can't preach orderliness. You can't preach decorum. Without
Safety
acting it out.
above decorum.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that.
We're in a new time.
We'll talk about that after the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So we've agreed that there are pros and cons for actually boarding school or day students. But let's talk about how we can make boarding house more effective and more beneficial to the students there.
So for me, I think, you know, when we're a lot younger, our parents didn't really have a relationship with the school. You know, just go, pay the fees, drop your children till end of term and all of that. But now we are parents that are aware, we are more informed. And so we now build relationship with the teachers of our children, the school owners. We have a relationship. You can easily, I'm sure all of you have the heads of school for your children. You have their numbers. So they should have an open door policy where parents can have an input in what is happening. I remember where I used to work. Parents can come in at any time. There's an open door policy. You walk in, you say you want to see your child. You may not necessarily speak to the child, but you can look into the classroom and see what's happening. Stay around and observe. You can go into the hostel and check his locker, make sure that he's adhering. That's a school, and people are trooping there with their children because they've been able to build trust. When I'm picking schools for my children, I'm very particular about how the teachers or the school heads behave around me entering their environment. If they are very shady and no, you can't enter, no, you can't, I'm like, I will not be able to trust these people. There's so much going on that they will not let me know. But if they are more open to, you can come in. I'm not a mad person. Now, why will I be going there every time to disturb
But there's
the
some
child?
mad parents.
No. Then
They're
they
mad
know
parents.
that you are now a mad parent, and they can tell you that you can't come all the time. But for every normal, no, as a mother, you have those instincts, you have those intuition that something is
But
happening.
you can't
to
because you
your
have a
child.
dream.
No,
You're not
now.
come and disrupt my school activities.
you're
I
a
won't let you go. Because of a
We
dream.
are talking about children.
I'm telling
It's
you,
my child we are talking about.
If you're a dreamer,
Yes,
please.
I
If I
can
dream,
only
I will come
You know, there's some mothers that have dreams every other day.
I'm a dreamer.
They're constantly
I am Joseph.
under the mountain.
I
And they are
am Joseph.
constantly
I
seeing one vision. So those kind of mothers that are coming to disrupt my school
You
activities. It's wrong.
except something is very wrong with the child for you to be seeing that child in the dream every day. It doesn't happen like that. If something is wrong with your child and you have that feeling, it's okay for you
go
to
and
be
check.
allowed to check on your
agree.
child. Any school that refuses you to enter, that means they are shady about what is happening in that school environment. So an open door policy will likely
Okay,
help
I like
us
that.
make it
I like
more
that.
better.
Yeah.
So just also add to that, let me use an example. I remember my cousin, he went to a Christian secondary school, boarding school, and he was horribly treated by seniors. And the school didn't really pay attention to it. It was just a particular time we went for visiting. The way he looked, disheveled, really dirty and whatever, we just knew something was up. And they had also accused him of some things. And you know your child now, you know what you raised, and all of a sudden he turns, and when we found out it was just all sorts of bullying, he just did not fit in there. And she moved him from that big school to a much smaller school, and he did so well there. So for schools, boarding schools, I think if they are big schools, create smaller cells that has like a matron, a school therapist, a group, a counselor for that community. So they also know, like I think for my school we used to have houses. So you have blue house, red house, blah, blah, blah. But the teachers that were supposed to head were not so involved. So you need maybe 1 or 2 more teachers who are involved that can even sit with the kids and talk to them in the evening within the hostel, not talking at them, because you know we know how to do that.
Yeah.
Tell you what to do, follow the rules, blah, blah, blah. But nobody's sitting with you and asking, so how far? You know, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What
We need
is
emotional
good?
So that's-
counseling
Yes,
for
we
those.
do. We need that and create smaller communities within the boarding school for bigger schools. And if not, for parents, I think try and look for the smaller schools. There's some small schools for your child.
As a
to
parent,
thrive.
you need to be very observant of your child too. If you visit school, just look beyond what the physical.
Yeah, what they are showing you.
Try to notice. There was a day I visited school, and I just went randomly out of work, and I saw my child. I usually have this tiptoe behavior when I get to school, because once his class was changed from the one that I could peep through the window, I started tiptoeing around the school. So I tiptoed to the class door. She didn't notice I was there, and I looked at my child sitting in a corner in the play group, and all the other kids were playing, and he was shivering.
Oh my God.
Pikin will not get fever. Oh my God. I told her, see, tomorrow me and that sister, we have something to do down. If it's not for the day I see her, I just know something was. Then the moment I spoke up and he saw me, was like, I said, no, let me get you to your sister's class. He said, no, mommy, you have to hold me. From that day, I started checking that child.
We're
So
not
if you-
talking about secondary school, about daycare centers.
I'm talking about. So imagine in a secondary school where the bullies are the ones in front and the boy just would not say it.
Well, okay, so
you should notice when he's not free to say anything.
So, okay, so we're talking about the children that are bullied. What are those who are bullied?
Why the bullies?
The bullies themselves. They also need counseling. They also need to be talked to.
Yes.
Because they are also a product of their own family or whatever,
See,
their relationship with their
the
parents.
teachers need to be more involved. You need to see the signs. You need to know who the bully is and who they are bullying. Most teachers do not understand that, do not know who is being bullied, or do not know those who are the bullies themselves. Teachers need training, not just on the teaching of the curriculum. We need to talk about mental health and all those things.
Miriam,
It's
there's something
important.
I want to touch on, because, I mean, back then, one of the reasons why parents send children to boarding school, you wanted your child to be shielded from all the demons and all the atrocities that go on in the family and even generally outside. So when you come on holidays, my mother used to shield me from going to parties or going out, because she just felt that I wanted to cage you. But honestly, today, that doesn't really suffice anymore, because children in boarding houses are just as exposed.
Yeah.
They jump fence.
They're just like, they jump fence. They're just like, so back then, they liked the fact that you were there, quiet, no parties, no boyfriends, nobody coming to touch you, nobody. But now, it doesn't even happen. So
Our parents then were just naive. Because they did not see, they thought it didn't happen. So they shipped you off to school and thought, okay, good, you're locked up.
So
But
the point I was trying to drive is that day schools itself aren't that safe.
Not at all. It's the
They
same
have
school.
Because they
their-
also have issues where your children are being totally exposed to the guard,
Yes.
to security. Your children are
kind of things
exposed.
happen.
If it's a mixed school, it's even they have relationships.
That's where the thing is.
Yeah, that's how it
And the
starts.
problem was the people who would not listen. So in the day school I went, even when you were being bullied and you tried to report, oh my God. I remember in JS2 tried to report to my teacher that somebody just stole my books and she should please help me lock, and help us search. And I got a beating for trying to report that my property was stolen. I put that teacher's name in my left hand.
Okay, we have to wrap up on this. But the truth is that I think going forward, we need an expert. We need to invite. Now, we've aired our own views on this. And we listen. Did we take any tweets at all?
No, we
Let's
didn't.
take a few
I have a
tweets
few
now.
tweets
So
here.
go ahead.
Abigail says, when I was in boarding school, my dad had a bad feeling I wasn't okay and was restless. He had to visit me. Thank God he came. I was so sick. When he arrived, I was getting moved to a general hospital, so he drove after the ambulance and stayed with me throughout hospital. I am strong, she says. Wahala for mama we no get intuition. No. Intuition kwa. If you are so filled with intuition, I bet keep your picking as day student. Imagine every parent coming to check on their wards at different times because of intuition. Is that still the boarding school?
Ayotunde Oduekon says, boarding house is the best to bring up a child. The child will learn how to survive in this tough world. Homosexuality, bullying, etc. has always existed in the society. Close communication is exposing them more. Let your home be good. It will show in the child. Soraya says, parents' hunches are very important. If a parent insists on seeing a child, calling out the child to the school reception wouldn't disrupt any school activities.
I think that this part of the conversation is a hot topic, because I totally disagree. But this is a conversation we'll have another day. We have to wrap up. As I said, we've aired our views. We'll bring in an expert. You want to say something?
I'm an expert too in education. So I wanted to say that teachers should be trained beyond just the academics. Okay. Now, some schools, because they are trying to gather as much money as they can, do not invest in training this
got
teacher.
that.
So in the whole hostel, you may not even have a teacher who's equipped to offer advice or offer therapy. And so they just do their classwork and they ignore the other aspects. So even if you cannot get someone you pay, you can bring in consultants who will come in from time to time and have like a relationship with the
Workshop.
children, ask them questions, get to know how they feel and what they feel.
Yeah.
And
You're
it's
right.
every teacher's job to observe the
Absolutely.
children in your class.
You're very
It's
correct.
important.
Learning is beyond cognitive skills.
Yeah,
You
it
have
is.
to learn how to do other things. On that note, we have to wrap up. But as I said, we're bringing an expert who can better explain to us how best to make use of the boarding houses and even day schools so that parents can ensure that their children are safe in all sectors of society. That's all we can take on this. When we come back, we move on to the next topic. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So we're discussing food handling during this season, especially the second wave of COVID-19 is upon us, and a lot of people will be going out to eat and drink in places. The question, therefore, is how do we avoid food contamination and poisoning so as to stay safe during this period? And I'd like to also link that up with our conversation with the boarding house, because the kids are in boarding houses and many of them are coming home now. But how do we even ensure that for food safety in these schools? Join us on the show is a food safety expert, Mr. Sunday Bangbushi. Welcome to the show, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Good to have you. You can call us on 090-241-63440. You can also tweet to us at TVC Connect, hashtag YourVTVC, so we can read your tweets. All right, so we'll discuss COVID in a moment, but we're talking about children, boarding house and all that. In your view, how best do we ensure food safety, especially when your children are concerned, both at home and in boarding houses?
Well, let me start, by identifying what are the risks. When you talk of food safety, we are looking at 3 different areas where you can have issues. Is either you have issue with biological, chemical, or physical. If you are talking of biological, you are talking of a problem coming from microorganism infecting the food. If you are talking about chemicals, mistakenly, adding chemicals.
Or even food preservatives.
It may not be hardened. You may use container that may have been used before, to store chemical. Then you now use the same to store food items, maybe your palm oil, your vegetable oil. I'm sure you must have had some cases where they say a family of 3 or 5, they took a meal or their dinner, and then by next morning, he said they are all dead. It's not impossible that something like that may have happened. And then we talk of the physical. When you talk of physical, contamination, that is when you talk of, maybe something like a pin, stapler pin, nails. Nails may even be so obvious, you may not, but something that maybe or glass particle, for example, sometimes you open your bottled drink and you see that, part of the tip has already chipped off. It may go into the drink. So those are the various areas where risk comes in. Now, if we want to look at it, maybe at home or in the boarding house or even eatery or wherever, one of the major ones that you likely have will be biological food contamination coming from microorganisms. And what are the causes? What can cause this? For example, if you use chopping board that you use for your raw food, you allow contact with cooked food, that may be a problem. Yes. If you store raw food with cooked food, you may have a problem because, you know, the process of cooking, you inactivate or kill the microorganisms. Okay. But in raw food, the micro are very active. And when, you know, there is a cross-contamination from the raw food to the cooked one, you remember that these are microorganisms that you cannot even see. So it's not a matter of, oh, even if I you know, sometimes it's not even wash. You just, you know, and you think, you know.
No, but this thing you just talk about, because all of us, we keep food. Therefore, I put it in the freezer, and maybe there's some meat I have not boiled, and everything just packed together. Can it contaminate each other? So I put maybe the raw food on top of it, and the plastic is packed. It can't contaminate each other.
Well, you see, every situation you assess the risk. For example, if, you know, the food is packed and sealed, that reduces the chance of that contamination happening. But in most cases, you see, because this is inside the fridge, this is inside so I can just lump everything together. You know, the essence of, you know, this type of conversation is that you have that consciousness. Right. Yeah. So every time you want to do something, you look at what are the risks I'm taking here. Right. So with that consciousness, for example, now you say you want to store your F4 and you still want to store your cooked food. Okay. You now know that now I need to do extra sealing or whatever.
So we're in the season of eating a lot, and these takeaway plates are, you know, they come in handy. You don't want to eat at the party, but you can take some home. How do we ensure that there is no chemical contamination in new plates? You know, they come packed in hundreds, and people just they just take and fill, and even in eateries, you know, they do it fast food. They do everything fast with such speed that you don't know when you're taking home a chemical, you know, poisoned food.
Well, in a normal setting, except something has gone terribly wrong, those takeaway packs are supposed to be, you know, they are non-reusable. I mean, it's not something that somebody have used and so you are supposed to just take and, you know, use. One, if it's designed for food, that means the composition is such that can, you know, contain the food and keep it safe. So the area of concern now for such pack is how do you store them before use? So if you store them in such a way that, you know, is exposed, especially maybe to
rats,
rodents, infestation, rats, and then, you know, rat droppings and all those things can, you know, enter into those. That's where the problem comes in. But if it is well, you know, stored.
So you're saying from factory it's safe to use straight?
Yes, if it's from the factory, it is well handled in the shop, and then to your, you know, the only concern should just be, okay, because you don't know all through the value chain, that's only should be the concern.
Okay, you know, sometimes you have a bottle of groundnuts, and then you want to use it either to drink garri or to make soup, and it breaks. But you don't want to lose the groundnuts, the peanuts. So you pick and pick and pick, and you're trying to avoid those bottles, specks. Is it safe to, if you can, pick it properly that you don't have those specks, or you just abandon the whole thing?
Is it dangerous to even eat to consume bottles? Is it that there's a speck of bottles? Is that even dangerous?
Well, if in that scenario, what I will advise is that you just dispose. How much is a bottle of granite compared to
3,000
wine?
There are some really
Eh,
nice
so-
granite that is very dry. You don't want to lose it.
But God forbid, if you take a tiny piece of glass
Glass,
in,
Yes.
3,000 cannot solve that problem.
Is it
Are you sure we've not
Are you
eaten
sure
glass
we've not-
before?
are you sure we've not eating glass in this
Somehow.
country? You know, all of us at some point,
We
we
have
For
to
have to
get
example,
it.
see,
because they will use eba. Eba will push it down.
Push it down.
No,
And you are good to go.
Please, let me say this. There are so many risks that we've taken in the past. For example, there's possibility that, okay, maybe you may not even notice. But what of maybe this is an incident that's happened to 10 people. And then one unlucky person out of that 10, that tiny glass goes somewhere inside the throat and then cause internal bleeding along the gulch. So that is the danger. And you know, the way we in the industry or the food safety expert look at it is that if there is a chance of even 1 in 1 million or 10 million, you know, getting injured or dying from consuming the food, then the fact that that probability is there, then you want to prevent
Avoid
it,
it. Okay.
because you can't be
Let me
sure.
go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. So we still have our guest with us. Yes, Mariam had a question
Yes.
for the break.
So in Nigeria, you know, we handle food with our hands. We like to eat with our hands. You go to a party, there's a tray, everybody picks up with their hands. How do you do that and still be safe without coming across, this one is feeling, what is this one feeling like? Because she wants to use a fork or she wants to use a toothpick. But how do you still maintain cultural practices and still be safe?
Thank you.
Well, that's a very tough one. Because you can control what you do with your, you can make sure before you touch food and whatever, you clean your hand. But you cannot control what other
Where
will
other
do.
people's hands have been.
And, generally, for for you just have to be observant. For example, if they are serving something in a tray, right? If it is just to pick and but if it's a matter of you have to go through and
Lifting
select.
and dropping.
Then,
We are
then
serving it and dropping.
for cake, I mean, I've been to parties where they pass and I do eat them, but except for somebody that is, except for somebody that is so greedy. I don't see any reason why somebody would have to be searching inside a tray for.
Okay, I get your point, but you see, there's some other examples that, because me, I'm a plantain chips addict. I mean, that's my favorite snack. But there was a day I saw a guy that sells plantain chips. He put his goods down. He went to pee, and he held his something was peeing. He now dangled back, put it back in, and then carried the plantain chips and went right back to the road. I'm like,
You've not seen the one that
yeah, digging it. So when I buy it, sometimes I just have to spray the pack. But you see, these are things we do all the time. But the question therefore is that, are some of these germs good for us? I mean, because we can't really protect ourselves from everything. I mean, there's some of the diarrhea part of the thing that make us healthy, at least protect us from COVID-19.
That was saving Nigeria.
That was saving Nigeria from COVID-19 today.
Well, I wouldn't say that's what is saving. Yes, because of our environment, we may have developed, sort of, not, I won't say immunity, but sort of resistance to some of, these things because we've been exposed to them. So the body, defense mechanism may actually be helping. But, we should not push our luck too far. We still need to do what we need to do. For example, if you are not aware, it's a different thing. You may decide, okay, I will be buying my plantain chips from an outlet where I'm sure, you can ask questions,
Like
maybe supermarket, who are the people,
It's a traffic on a street.
but you can't be too sure, but at least you have to be, as careful as you can.
Okay.
Let's talk about seasoning. This is the period where they are cooking and all the foods are just tasting. So you go and how do I call it now? How do I say it? There's the white one.
MSG.
There's the normal one. And our mothers used to say the white one is the one that can poison you. I'm talking of food seasoning now. The white one can poison you. They don't.
And it's the one that makes the food very sweet.
And that one makes it sweet. So which seasoning will you? Or should we even use seasoning at all? Or I'm not for me, but which one?
Okay, let me. In fact, I think it's a very good opportunity to address this.
Okay. Thank you.
I've heard this. I don't want to mention any
Brand
name. That's the white. This thing is bad. This one is. Now, if you look at the history, that white one is called MSG, monosodium glutamate. And if you look at even the cube one, the other ones, they still contain that MSG. And when you look at there is what is called Codex Alimentarius Commission. That's the world body that is, in charge of food additives and the rest of it. Monosodium glutamate is classified as GRAS. GRAS means generally regarded as safe. So, for everything in this world, even water, moderation is the key word.
Okay.
So, when you use it, in fact, those things are even self-limiting because when you put too much,
You wouldn't know
you won't the taste. So it's matter of using all these things in moderation.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap up right now.
There's no issue. I've even seen some scientists argue, but I've read about this thing, and what they complain about, some people, what they call Japanese syndrome. People that go to Japanese restaurants because this is something that is very common with them, and they were thinking that it is because of the monosodium glutamate. But there was an experiment done, and they discovered that.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, but I do appreciate you. Thank you very much. At least you helped us to clear that up with the MSG. So it's not like it's unsafe. You can use it. But you just have to be in moderation. Thank you very much, sir. We're going to go on a very quick break because we need to discuss this NIN issue. Okay. Everybody's talking about it, and there's a lot of crowd out there. So we need an update from the government on exactly what should be done and what has been done. Stay with us. We'll be right back. NCBC, actually.
Stay tuned.
Thanks for staying with us. So before we close the show, it was important for us to have a conversation with Dr. Chinwe Ochu, who is the Prevention Program and Knowledge Management Department head right there, to give us an update on the government's directives, especially now that COVID, the second wave, is upon us. Dr. Chinwe Ochu, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us. So very quickly, madam, could you just give us a summary of what the new directives are and how best we can begin to adhere to these new directives?
Okay, we want Nigerians to know that we are having increasing number of cases of COVID-19 in the country. We had a respite, but the numbers have started rising. And this is mostly as a result of widespread and lack of adherence to COVID-19 protocols. We are also at a point very close to a festivity, a very popular one that will mean a lot of people may have to travel. There will be a lot of social gatherings here and there. So our advice to Nigerians is if you don't have to travel, please don't travel. Let's avoid non-essential travels because the more we come in contact with people, we'll have large gatherings, people moving from one place to the other, the higher the risk of transmitting the virus. So if you don't have to travel, please don't travel. And if you must travel, make sure you adhere to these protocols. Keep a distance from the other person next to you of a minimum distance of about 1 meter, especially if you're wearing your face mask. Ensure you wear a face mask properly, covering your nose and your mouth as you leave your house. Maintain good hand and respiratory hygiene. Wash your hands frequently with soap under running water. As you travel and you get home, please try to celebrate among your own family members. This is not the time to really visit the neighbor, do this or that. And if you must do that, please make sure you wear your face mask and you keep that distance from the other person that will make it difficult for whatever is coming from the respiratory tract of that person to get to you. Remember that in the villages where people are going to now, that's where we have most of the high-risk persons, like the elderly and those with comorbidities. So people that are asymptomatic, that travel home to the village to celebrate with their loved ones, have that tendency of being able to transmit the virus to those that are at high risk of having the severe forms or even dying from it. So we have to be very, very careful and ensure that as we are celebrating safely. So let's avoid gatherings. And if you must have meeting or the other, try to meet in open spaces where there is good ventilation.
Dr. Ochu, could
Make sure that you have fresh air.
Dr. Ochu, could you please confirm to us this new strain we're reading about? Is that true? Is there a new strain? And if there is, what are the characteristics of this new trait, and how do we prevent ourselves from catching it or contracting it?
Research has shown us that there are some emerging strains. In UK, it's been discovered in UK and the other countries. Even in Nigeria, we have demonstrated a very minimal number of that strain in the country, but a lot is still unknown about that strain. So a lot of scientific research is going on to understand whether that new strain poses any higher risk of transmission and whether it is associated with more severe forms of the disease. So there's still a lot that we don't know about that new strain, and that is why we are advising that we continue to try to protect ourselves from even getting the virus, whatever strain it is. All these social measures, public health and social measures, non-pharmaceutical interventions of physical distancing, proper hand hygiene, proper respiratory hygiene, avoiding large gatherings, maintaining that distance of about 2 meters, or where that is not possible, at least 1 meter from the other person, is still able to keep us from whatever strain of the virus is out there in the community.
Okay, Dr. Ochu, I have one more question for you. Is there a smooth communication between NCDC and other federal agencies? Because 1 second NIN telling us, NCC is telling us we have to go and get our NIN numbers before we shut down at the end of the year, and then we see this huge crowd. So you're telling us not to go out to and maintain social distancing, but are you telling your colleagues in the federal government the same thing? Because they make these announcements and I just troop out, and then it causes the spread of this virus.
Well, our message has been the same right from the beginning of this response, and we work very closely with other government agencies. What we launched against the COVID-19 was a multi-sectoral response. So, and the protocol is very clear. We don't encourage large gatherings of any form at this time, especially now that we are very close to a second wave. We've already started climbing the steepest slope of another wave. So where people must, meet in large numbers, so to say, then there must be things put in place to ensure that there's that distance between one person and the other. And also, we can stagger, that kind of registration can be staggered so that all the people don't have to come to that particular place at the same time. So there are ways we can get about this and still continue to run our society without exposing ourselves to unnecessary risk.
All right. Thank you very much, madam. We appreciate it. Sorry we had to bring you up very quickly, but it was important for us to get the facts from you to be sure what the next steps are. But thank you very much for clarifying that for us. Okay. We're speaking with the head of the Prevention Program and Knowledge Management at Department of NCDC, Dr. Chinwe Ochu. That's all we can take, ladies, on the show. Have a fabulous day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.